Good morning. I had an awesome call about 10 days ago. It was from Rob Feeney. And he said, Scott, would you mind preaching for 10 minutes today? And I thought, yes, awesome. You see, only last year, at the end of the year, I received a prophetic word at a prophetic conference, and God came through me to ask me to do something that I have never really been passionate to do. I've done motivational speaking as a coach, but he was asking me to step out and look for opportunities to be able to preach. And I said, okay, God, I'll do it. And because of this opportunity and two others, I actually am now using my voice as a vessel, and God is using me on this platform, and I'm just honored that you asked me today. Today, I'm going to talk about my perspective on the verse that Rob gave me, and that's Romans 15:13. And it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." I asked God, what do you want me to share today? And one word came, and that word was presence. And I tested that word. And then I thought, instead of just going straight to my Bible and trying to write 10 minutes of sermon, that I'll just ask God through the next 10 days what He wants to share with me, and hopefully that would convey in some way to you about presence. And today my goal is to share a couple short stories about my journey in my walk with God with presence. Does that sound cool? Yeah. All right. So who right now has a tiny little infant? All right, and who remembers a tiny little infant being in their family? Yeah? And who has had a tiny little infant and small kids at the same time? All right, so I'm going to be relating to a lot of you. So my journey starts with a story about my son Malachi. And I came up from work one day, and I was in my studio, and I was wearing my work clothes, and I came up to a really loud house. And my 3-year-old and my 4-year-old, Josiah and Nehemiah, were chasing each other. There was a lot of screaming going on. And my wife was about kitted out. She was feeding Malachi, and she said, "Here, burp him." And she ejected the room. Of course, all the noise was going on, and I was in work mode. My work land was filled with creativity and ideas and flow and all these other things, but I had to immediately jump into being present now with being with kids in kid land. So I burped my son, still thinking about work and all the things. Hearing the noise, he spat up all over me and my dress shirt. Who can relate? I thought to myself, wow, what a beautiful mess, this jungle room playroom that I'm in here with my kids. And then I looked at my son, very content after having a wonderful feed, and then also looking at me, he started to talk in his little 2-month-old way. And he opened me up, and I started to talk back. And he started to connect like this, as if to say to me, "Here I am, Daddy. Let's talk." And I got engaged with him. But then some noise happened with my children, and I thought, oh, quick, I better scold them. And just as that happened, it came through me from God that, no, I need to stay in presence with my son Malachi. And I did. And for an entire minute, and that's a long time for an infant, we engaged and connected. And the only reason why that could happen is because I was in presence with him. This reminds me of the story of Elijah. And in that story, I'll read it. He said, "Go forth and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord was passing by, and a great and strong wind was rending the mountains, and breaking in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, He wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave and Behold, a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And it reminded me again about being in presence with a God, and somehow how it comes, and how an infant can show us how to be in presence. Shortly after that, a friend called me and was excited about a speech that he was going to give with 1,000 people. And he'd never really spoke in front of a lot of people, and I was excited for him. And I thought to myself after that phone call, I'm going to go over to his house uninvited, and I'm just going to be present with him. And I did. And I just stood there and I just listened to what he's going to share in front of all these people. And I encouraged him. And he was excited about this journey, this new adventure for himself. And only at the very end did I offer a few pieces of creative feedback that might help him in his speech. I was so excited to hear the story about how he loved that experience for himself and how it opened himself up. And I was proud of myself for being able to listen to God, who said, go being present with that person, and offer him just your space just to hear and be in presence with him. While I was away that night, my wife was with my son Josiah, who's 4 years old, and she had said to him, "Josiah, Daddy will come home in a little bit and he will sing you a song goodnight." Now, I often sing a song goodnight to my boys. It's just something that we do in our family. And I was gone for a little bit longer than he might have expected, probably an hour. I came to the door, not knowing the conversation my wife had had with Josiah. I opened the door to little footprints coming to the door to meet me. And looking up with very hopeful eyes was my son Josiah. "Daddy, will you please sing me a song and tickle my back?" I came into his room. Now, I have a couple regular songs that I sing to him. Worship songs, a song I wrote for him. But this time he said, "No, Daddy, please sing a new song." Okay. Slowing myself down, trying to just silence myself, I felt that God gave me a song, and it was a song that I have not sang for a long time. Years ago, back when I was in high school, I loved a band called Jars of Clay, and they had a song called Love Song for a Savior, and the lyrics go like this: "In open fields of wild flowers, she breathes the air and flies away. She thanks her Jesus for the daisies and the roses. In so simple language, someday she'll understand the meaning of it all. He's more than the laughter or the stars in the heaven, as close as a heartbeat or a song on her lips. Someday she'll trust him and learn how to see him. Someday he'll call her and she will come running and fall in his arms, and tears will fall down and she'll pray." And then the chorus goes, "I want to fall in love with you. I want to fall in love with you." And it continued on and on and on, just like that. And I realized that that song wasn't just for my son Josiah, that was a song for me. And just like the little girl in the story in the song, it was a story also for me to come back to God and just look at the wild flowers and look at nature and look at that presence that I could have with him. So all of this is all great and wonderful. And I was practicing presence all week. And I thought to myself, I'm going to treat myself. And what I'm going to do is just go to a spa. And I thought this ionizing cleanse thing with the feet would be really cool. So I went to the spa, and I put my feet into this ionizing cleansing bath, and I came there with the presence of mind to say, I am going to sit in this spa, and it's going to be wonderful. And I'm going to practice presence for 30 minutes and wonder whether or not this thing really does take the toxins out of my feet. And I did for about 3 minutes, sit in presence. And I sat in presence, and then all of a sudden, it's true, it started turning brown and icky. It's gross. I had to reach in my pocket, take my phone out, and take a little video of it to really show that it was true, that it really happened. And then I just put my phone down, I saw a magazine. Wow, that's a cool magazine. And as I was doing that, my phone fell into this gross water. quickly I reached down below to pick it up, only to see the water had got through this bulletproof case because I didn't have the little knob on the top, and it was soaking into the screen. I turned it off as fast as I could. My feet were soaked with filth. What do I do? The lady came from the other place and said, "Hey, what happened?" Knowing that I was exasperating over my cell phone, she guessed, "Did your cell phone fall in the water?" It might not have been the first time it happened. I said, "I need to leave now, please, and go to the repair shop." Well, she came, and it took a little while, but they cleaned my feet off. My phone didn't turn on by this time. I got out, I ran to the repair shop as fast as I could, and they calmly told me it'll be $90, sir. $90 to clean it out. I was blessed, though, because it could have been a shot phone. So what did I learn? Although I had the intention to go out and just be in presence, I had the intention to go out and be in presence. Who's following me here? To be in presence, I got distracted once again. And yes, there was a cost in this case for it. But now I look for the reward, and I can share this story for you. God has a wonderful way of being in presence with us all the time. Nick, do you have 2 seconds? I'm going to bring Nick up here just to share a quick little analogy for us. All right, you want to hold this for a sec? And Nick is going to represent us as a people, not himself, us. All right. And sit. All right. So this example over here is an example of overflow. So this right here is an example of overflow, and the Father's overflow. He wants to overflow in us in all ways. My belief of what abundance is that we were created as more than enough. We are more than enough today, and more than enough is coming to us in the future. And when we are in abundance, we are positioning ourselves for abundance. So right now, if we're pouring this down just like this is imagined that this is overflow. The Father never stops overflowing, ever. But what we need to do is we need to position ourselves in the overflow. Now what Nick needs to do as us is he needs to position himself in the overflow. Right? And because of overflow and because of the way that overflow works and the Father works, that He wants us to be so filled and saturated that it overflows not just on us, but on everything else that's around us. And I believe that that's the message that God has delivered to me and God has delivered to all of us. Now your job, Nick, is to walk like that, with that overflow, down to your seat without dropping it a little bit.
Can I share it with others?
You can drink some of the overflow if you want. Thank you, Nick. My final point is this. The reason why I had that idea for that analogy wasn't because I was that great to come up with that idea for that analogy. It was because I was fortunate enough to have some parents-in-law who took the older 2 children as me and my wife went shopping. But before we went shopping, we had the opportunity to have a coffee. And our youngest boy was asleep, our infant was asleep. And in our precious few minutes of time that we often get, my wife was present with me as I was sharing what I wanted to share with you today. And out of that, she said what I just barely shared to you. What about overflow and positioning yourself for overflow? So my final point is that sometimes we will be very, very pleasantly surprised and blessed when we let other people be present with us as well, and we're present with them at the wisdom that they can share and speak into our life.